let's just be in this moment. Let's be here. We've taken in a lot of information. There's a lot going on. But what a gift it is to be with one another this morning. So let's just try to stay in this moment as best we can. Sound good? You're just such beautiful people. This is a beautiful time. Okay. We are in the book of Mark still, and we are in Mark chapter 4. The passage this morning goes like this. He said to them, "Do you bring a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed?" Those are two wild options. Instead, don't you put it on a stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. I was super excited as we were going through the preaching calendar, and we were going through the passages, and that I was going to be speaking on the first weekend in Pride, and I was going to have what I think is possibly the gayest passage I've ever read. And listen, because as soon as I read this passage, here's the exact image I had. It's like a cheesy movie where like a drag queen is mentoring like a closeted tween, and then it's the part in the movie where the drag queen's like putting on her makeup and then talking to the kid, and it's like, "You see this lamp, baby? You are this lamp. And right now you're hiding your lamp. You need to let the lamp shine." And then like the next scene is like the kid being gay at prom, and everyone's like, "Yes." So for all the riders in the room, we'll talk after. Unless someone's dying to buy that. But it's great, right? Because this is like a pretty straightforward passage. The idea here is you have something beautiful. You are something beautiful. There is divinity in you. And what would you do with something very beautiful? Would you hide it, or would you let it shine? Would you put it out on a stand? And this is probably a passage we're all familiar with. At least it's an idea we're familiar with, because we talk about this over and over and over and over and over again at New Abbey, that we all have dignity. We all have divinity, that we are created in the image of God, and that we carry that with us, and that is beautiful, and that deserves to be shown, and that deserves to be free, and that deserves to be loved. And we say this over and over and over again, and it bears repeating. Why? Because actually doing that is actually hard. The idea of it is super simple. Every single person, every single one of you carries the image of God, is beautiful, deserving of love and care and freedom. Boom, full stop, period. Why do we repeat it over and over again? Why does it show up over and over again? Why do we hear story after story, a story of Jesus reminding us that every single person, this person that's demon-possessed, the leper, the woman caught in adultery, that every single person has human dignity? Because it bears repeating, because a lot of us have taken in information, not only on social media, not only news, but we've taken in information from sources and people around us that have often led to our believing of the contrary. Every single one of us in this room has some experience, multiple experiences, where we have digested a narrative that has been counter to the idea that we are good and beautiful and deserving of shining our light on a stand. Which is why we have to repeat it, and we will keep repeating it every single Sunday, which is why we get to have these conversations. Because the reality is, being beautiful, putting your light on the stand, standing up and saying confidently, "I am deserving of love, I am created in the image of God, I'm cute, I'm wonderful, I'm beautiful, I am all these things," sometimes it comes at a cost. And that cost is real. For all of the queer folks in here, you already understand the cost that came with feeling deserving of love, with being confident, with putting your lamp on a stand. And that's not exclusively a queer experience. There are people in here who had relationship dynamics in their family of origin that they wanted to no longer participate in because that was keeping them from shining, and that cost you. For some people in here, you had dynamics in your professional life, you had dynamics in your relationships, you had dynamics with your own faith system that you said, "This is keeping me from shining, I need to deconstruct these ideas, I need to no longer participate in these systems for me to fully shine," and that cost you something. It's these beautiful ideas of Jesus that are sometimes simple to understand and then really hard to carry out. And sometimes I'm reminded of the ways in which we talk about Jesus, and we're like, "Man, I stand by every single message of Jesus. I stand by the first shall be last, and last shall be first, and there's no hierarchy, and that's counter-narrative, and this is upside-down thing, and I'm going to fully live that." And then we kind of forget that cost him too. Right? So we have this idea that feeling confident and shining your light on a stand and living in a world that where you have human dignity because you believe so much in your own dignity, you believe in the dignity of every human being, and it's going to be this beautiful experience, and it is, but it will always cost. Historically, it has. All the people who I look up to, all of the leaders I want to emulate and follow, all of the people that have shined their light in a way that makes me believe that I can shine mine too, all paid a price. And I think at some point, we have to have the real conversation with ourselves of acknowledging whether that is worth it. And if it is, then we keep going. And I believe it is. I was reading this quote that I've loved for years. Nelson Mandela said that, this is paraphrasing the quote, even though you're like, you love it, but you don't know word for word. Okay, if you look it up, this might not be exact. But he says that to live free is not only to break our own chains, but to live in a way that liberates the people around us. We all know what it's like to look at someone and have someone that is the reason why we felt strong enough to do something we did. Whether it's a family member who broke out of a toxic system, someone who came out before us, whether it's someone who pursued a career we wanted to have, or someone who created art we wanted to create, or someone who let out there and let their little light shine and we said, I could do that. Someone who fought against the system, someone who openly critiqued the church, someone who deconstructed their faith. Whatever the thing is that you are wanting to shine, whatever the thing is that you have had to do, there's always someone who's gone ahead of you and you're like, I could do it because they did it. They're a regular, real person. Beyonce has the same 24 hours in every day. Or maybe she doesn't. I don't know. I feel like she has to have at least an 8th day. And so it's beautiful. And the call and message of Jesus is the same over and over. You are beautiful and deserving of freedom and love. You have everything you need. And any message or system or person that tells the opposite is wrong. And our job is to work against those messages, to find them, and to bring them out. Because the second thing that happens in the second part of this passage, I don't know if you have experienced this, but sometimes we get into moments where we get the courage and the bravery to put our lamp on a stand, and we find that confidence, and then that light shines on something that we're like, didn't really know was there. And we're like, oh, how'd you get there? And here's an example. So a few years ago, this is like many years ago, this is probably actually a handful of years ago. But sometimes when I say sometimes when I say last year, I'm talking about 2019. Does anyone, so when I say a few years ago, I'm talking like 2018, 2017. We did this event at New Abbey, actually, with Candace, actually, in the back. Everybody say, hey, Candace. Candace is amazing. And we did this event for, queer Christians. And we did it, this is back when New Abbey had a beautiful space. No shade to this one, but it was, was anyone there in the ad agency days? Yeah, it was stunning, okay? It was beautiful. And so we got these queer Christians, and we had speakers, and we had music, and we had conversations, and it was such a beautiful experience. And everyone that was there was sort of finding their way, and what does it mean to be queer and Christian? And there was so much confidence and so much beauty in the room. And one of the things that we did was when everyone walked in, we passed out these surveys that had all these questions. Have you ever struggled with your mental health? Do you think about this? All these things, and people filled them out, and then we mixed them up and gave them to everyone. So you would be holding the survey of someone in the room. It wouldn't be yours, but it's just representative of the room. And then as we read the questions off, we said, if yours says yes, would you stand? So we could see in the room what everyone was kind of dealing with. And one of the questions was, I still sometimes worry that I'll go to hell. And we were like, we'll just throw that one on there. But, we're like all these queer Christians are confident. And half the room, or more than half the room stood up. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it, right? Sometimes we have these moments where we're like, I'm going to come out, and I'm going to have this experience, and I'm going to engage that confidence and put my lamp on a stand, and then that lamp shines on the fact that I have actually internalized years and years and years and years around a narrative that I am actually bad and going to hell. And that actually doesn't go away in one day. That doesn't go away in one moment of me being like, and today's the day I embrace my lamp on a stand, right? All of us have ingested years and years and years and years of narratives around you fill in the blank. And while we have this beautiful opportunity to continually engage and put our lamp on a stand, it's like this beautiful cycle of every time we take that light out from under a bowl, which is an odd place, and we take it from under a bowl, then that light shines on something that we didn't know was there, and then we get to sit with that thing, and we get to move through that thing, and we get to comfort that thing until we find another light that's there, and we put it on a stand, and then that stand and that light shines a light on something, and then we keep keep, and it's a cycle that we keep and keep and keep and keep. And I don't, that may not sound encouraging, but it really is. Because it's a beautiful process. Because what we're not searching for in this space and what we're not searching for in our life is the one moment where everything changes. We kind of joke around here sometimes that there's a certain brand of Christianity that some of us grew up in where that felt like an option. Like, okay, I'm going to raise my hand at the end of this one church service, and this thing that I've struggled with for years will disappear. And it never did. But what I have gotten to do is participate in this cycle where I have these confident and brave moments where I put my light on a stand. And sometimes that light reminds me of something that I need to sit with myself, that I need to grieve, and then I need to be a part of. And then that gives me a little more light. And then that light gives me an opportunity to sit with something else. And it's this beautiful process that isn't as much so I've arrived, as much so I'm arriving. I'm taking my lamp out, I'm putting it under a bowl, I'm finding another lamp under the bed, I'm looking at another bowl, I'm finding another thing. It's beautiful. And it's ongoing. And it takes the pressure off of this idea or this experience that we're supposed to have some kind of catalytic moment that changes everything from now on for the rest of forever. It's just not realistic. Like, oh, okay, now I just got married. Now that will heal every insecurity I've ever had about attachment, okay? That's, I don't know if you know this, it's not true, okay? That doesn't... like I'm gonna have a baby and that will just erase every issue I had with my parents, okay? These things, it's not happening, right? Okay, I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna go to the Pride Parade and then I'll never have any more internalized homophobia. These aren't things. But if we look at it as each one of these is an opportunity to turn that lamp up brighter, for that lamp to expose us to things that have been hidden in the dark, then it's a beautiful experience. Then we do get to say things like, oh my gosh, I just got married, and in this new partnership, it's showing me things about my attachment style that I have an opportunity to work through. Oh my gosh, going to this Pride Parade actually reminded me that I still have some kind of feelings about myself because of the narratives I've been fed. Oh my gosh, becoming a parent actually really showed me what systems in my family of origin that I don't want to pass on or I do want to pass on, and I get the opportunity to sit with that. That's beautiful. And that's a lot less pressure than like, you better put your lamp on a stand so everyone can see it and then they'll be saved and they won't go to hell. Which is just a little story I heard. The other day, this is literally like a few days ago, and this is like an awful and embarrassing story, but I was walking with my wife and I had this moment. We were walking by somebody on the street, and we were walking and talking, and so like I didn't acknowledge them, and we're walking, having a conversation, and I had this like wave of emotion, and I was like, oh my gosh, like years ago, when I was in like undergrad, we had a speaker come, and I remember that I don't even remember, sometimes things just stick with you in a different way, and he had said like, there's a chance that we'll be walking by someone on the street and not acknowledge them, and then that will have been Jesus, and then when Jesus comes back, we will be left behind. And for whatever reason, the music, the lighting, I don't know what it was, but that like got me, and I have carried that with me, and literally 2 days ago, walking with my wife down the street, talking, and then not acknowledging that person on the street, I was like, oh shit. Like what? What if that was him? And then I'm like, what? Do you know how far I have deconstructed my faith? Do you know how far I've come? Do you know how all the work I've done for me to be 2 days ago thinking that I'm going to get left behind at the rapture because I didn't make eye contact with a random man on the street? Okay? That is not, oh my gosh, okay? All to say, the narratives that we have ingested run very deep, you guys. And we don't know when they're going to come up. And we don't know when they're going to pop out. And we don't know when we're going to see the seeds and the little leaves pop out from a narrative that we ingested years and years and years ago from a random speaker on our college campus, or something that our mom said that we forget about until 20 years later and something happens and we say, oh my gosh, that conversation stuck with me. And this passage and this idea that putting our lamp on the stand and continually finding our own beauty and reminding ourselves that we are created in the image of God actually creates the light for us to find those things. It's not that we create the light and all those things disappear. It's not that we need to sit in the darkness forever. It's that we get to engage in this beautiful both and, where we put our light and we find that confidence. And sometimes things pop up because of that light, and we are able to have that conversation. The only reason that felt so jarring to me, that I had a thought that I might get left behind at the rapture, which isn't even something I even believe in, but I'm afraid it will leave me behind, okay, which doesn't even make sense. The only reason that felt so abnormal to me is because of how far I've gone in the other direction. That doesn't mean that that's not going to pop up, but I have done so much work, and I felt so proud of the idea that felt like a foreign object to me. That thought kind of hit me really hard, because I'm like, oh, because I'm not living in that world, because I have done these things, and I have deconstructed my faith, and I've had these conversations, and I have sort of sorted through my ideas and fear of the rapture, not all of it apparently, right? And that's such a beautiful thing, that as we gather together every single Sunday and you get in community and relationships with people who constantly look at you and remind you you are created in the image of God, you're beautiful, you're deserving of love and freedom, and so is every human being on the planet, it doesn't mean that those things still won't pop up, but when they do, hopefully they feel a little bit more foreign. And they stop us in our tracks and we say, oop, I need to sit with that. Not hide it under a bowl, okay, because now the bowl's empty because we took the lamp out, okay? This analogy will die soon, but to sit with them. And I think the number one thing that we can do to be able to sit with those things is to just give ourselves space. I have felt so much pressure recently. I don't know if anyone else. I've just been feeling a lot of pressure, a lot of social pressure to get things right, to have the right words, to have the right responses to things. I felt internal pressure to be further ahead in like my career or life than I am. I have felt financial pressure because eggs cost like $21. I've just felt all kinds of pressure. And it's been such a great practice to try and give myself space. That when these things come up, not to say like, oh, I'm going to distract myself, I'm going to look at something else, or I'm going to look away, to say like, what would it be like to sit with those parts of me? To give myself space to sort through those ideas. To give myself space to just sit under the lamp and remind myself how far I have come and to be proud of that. To give myself a second to be like, okay, still moving, but man, have we come a long way. Or to say, okay, what was that thing that felt? It's just giving ourselves the space. Like I said when we started, we live in a wild world where information is like just coming into our brain at an unprecedented rate. And I'm really tired of unprecedented. I want precedented, okay? I want my house to cost $1. I want whatever they had before this. And so my challenge today is for us to just, how can we give ourselves that space? How can we engage in that process? And I don't know where you land in it. Maybe you don't give yourself enough credit for how far you've come, and maybe you're avoiding the things that have popped up, and maybe it's a combo of both. But what would it look like to just give ourselves some space to breathe through that, to sit with that, and to say, gosh, that was really hard, and I did it. Or, ooh, this feels really hard, and I'm not looking at it. I don't know which one you're thinking, but you do. Okay, God knows. Just kidding. I think one of the most beautiful things about this community, and when I'm here, I just like can't even handle, is knowing so many of your stories and the beauty of it, and how hard you fought to get to where you are now. Literally, all of you. I know the cost, right? Some of you talk about finding a place like New Abbey, and you're so happy you found it, but that came at a cost. Right? The relationships with your families and partners and all of the things happening in this room. It's so beautiful. And we have all come so far, and we have fought so hard to be at a church where we get up on a Sunday morning and we said Happy Pride 92,000 times just to make sure it's sunk in, okay, that we are happy, it's Pride. And I also know that a lot of us are still dealing with some of those narratives, some of those relationships. And we get to do both. We get to shine the light, and we get to bring the things in the darkness out in the open. And that is a beautiful experience and a beautiful opportunity. And I wish, exactly. I say this all the time, and I might just go rogue and do it one time, that I could be a prosperity preacher, and I do wish that I could say, like, all right, William's going to come up here, he's going to sing a song, and if you want to leave all of it behind, come to the front. But I know that some of it will still be there with you. I know that you're going to walk out the door and still have it. And so instead, the way less sexy invitation is, man, if you want to sit in this cycle and just keep going through it forever with some fun people, this is your place. And that's beautiful. This is the last thing I'll say. I had a therapist. She always used to talk about like trauma as a spiral staircase, that we will most likely keep encountering the same things, but hopefully from a different vantage point every time, right? And that's what we get to do together. We get to just, walking and talking, okay? And we may not get off, but we are going to keep seeing it from a different vantage point and a different vantage point, because we are growing and we are evolving and we are facing things and we are experiencing them and we are not ignoring them and we are celebrating the wins and we are moving and moving and moving and moving. And that doesn't mean one day it's all going to be gone, but what a great journey we get to go on together. So you are going to grab the same 3 or 4 people around you and answer this question. What is one way you can give yourself space this weekend?